Hello, welcome to LOG3206 Silk Road Logistics course. This is a course that covers historical, technological, cultural, political and economic aspects of international trade and logistics with a focus on the Silk Road. In this course, we'll be answering questions like why trade routes such as the Silk Road exist based on the economic benefits they provide, how they expand with the help of technological changes, and what their effects are on the societies they touch. Finally, we will be analyzing China's current Belt and Road initiative with all these in mind. This is one of the courses that you have to do a lot of reading and watching. My role is basically to guide you through the correct material. There will be 2 exams and 2 reports which will determine your overall course grade. Homo sapiens appeared around 300,000 years ago in East Africa, around today's Ethiopia. Humans started to migrate out of Africa some 70,000 years ago from Arabic Peninsula along the southern coast of Asia. Another migration wave started around 40,000 years ago towards Europe. Early explorers were probably looking for better resources for survival, and of course they succeeded. Human population, which had shrunk to probably less than 100,000, started to grow again. Traveling to explore must be encoded in our genes. Exchange of objects must have been present even in the earliest societies. Economic theory well explains the gains from exchanging what you have more with what you have less. If I have a number of good bows and if you have a bunch of good arrows, it is obvious that both of us will benefit from exchanging bows with arrows. Barter must have been the initial form of trade as money has not been invented yet. How and when this had led to trade is not really known. Travelers must have seen the benefits of trade more, as the novelties they carried around obviously must be in high demand by other communities. When they brought back new items, some people must have shown interest in them. Having observed the benefits of barter, some travelers might have adopted this trade as a way of living. Knowing what is in demand and where to obtain them would give travelers an upper hand in such trade. A trade between 2 villages might have extended to more and more villages. There's a game theoretical support to why many sellers cluster at some location and time. Sellers coming together at so-called bazaars would draw in buyers, which in turn attract more sellers and buyers. Trade between nearby communities probably grew to longer distance trade. Domestication of plants and animals began independently in the Middle East, Mesoamerica, China, and the Papua New Guinea from the 11th millennia to the 6th millennia BC. Rise of the agriculture led to settlements like Çatalhöyük, the Indus Valley, and Egyptian civilizations, and later to Sumerian civilization. A note here, to put things into chronological perspective, you are in your 20s. A century is 4 to 5 times your age, and the longest living human is around 100 years old. Life expectancies as you survived your childhood have been around 60 when humans were living as hunter-gatherers. As the agriculture developed and people started to live in cities, life expectancies got significantly shorter. Only after the Industrial Revolution, life expectancies started to rise again. So when we talk in millennia, we are talking about 20 to 25 human lifetimes, or some 40 to 50 generations. A civilization such as the Çatalhöyük lasted at least 12 centuries, starting around 7400 BC, which is a very long time indeed. Sumerian civilization started around 3500 BC. There's almost 3 millennia between the two. The first people of Çatalhöyük were probably hunter-gatherers. Later though, they had undergone the Neolithic Revolution. Storage of cereals such as wheat and barley have been found. Peas were also grown. Fruits and nuts such as almonds and pistachios were harvested. Sheep were domesticated, and there's evidence that cattle domestication started. It appears that there's an industry based on producing obsidian tools and pottery. They must have been used and traded for items such as flintstone from Syria and seashells from the Mediterranean. Salt is also thought to be traded. The existence of trade definitely shows that there are nearby settlements. Hacılar is a similar settlement 200 kilometers west of Çatalhöyük. It is 25 kilometers to the south of the city of Burdur today. Both Hacılar and Çatalhöyük lie pretty much on the same east and west route that will later become the part of the Silk Road. Self-sufficient hunter-gatherers and early farmers who were forced to find or produce everything they needed or simply wanted could trade grain for milk, milk for a pot, pot for clothing. When settlements grew into larger cities, whole cities might have adopted the same approach. If you don't have it, then trade. The earliest long-distance trade is believed to have occurred between Mesopotamia and Indus Valley around 3000 BC. Initially only lightweight but valuable items such as textiles, precious metals and spices were traded. Journeys were long, hard and dangerous. But the prospects of high profits lured many middlemen into long-distance trade. Regions rich in sought-after items became financially rich as well. In a relatively short time, trade expanded to the whole Middle East and North Africa region, the Mediterranean, and the whole Eurasian continent. By the 2nd millennium BC, regions rich in resources were exporting heavily. Cyprus, for example, copper, Egypt, papyrus and wool, Britain, tin, and China, jade, spices, and later, of course, silk. Trade also created middleman nations as well. Expert seafarers, the Phoenicians, were weaving a trade fabric between the 25th and the 5th centuries BC, reaching a high point around 1000 BC. One of the famous trade routes is the incense route, linking the Mediterranean and the source of incense and spices. Although it existed from 2500 BC, the peak of the incense trade route was roughly between the 7th century BC and the 2nd century AD. Then, of course, one of the most famous of all trade routes is the Silk Road. Silk Road connected East and West from the 2nd century to almost the 18th century. Today, sea and land routes are still connecting East and West. And for that, China is supporting modern trade networks through the new Belt and Road Initiative.